Thank you so much. It's such an incredible film. It's so moving, it's so informative, it feels so sort of comprehensive in some ways. Tell me about the very beginning, because we've got those sort of scenes in 2013, but at what point for you did this become more than just filming and a film?
Well, I started to, let me talk first about before it was a film. I started, so I've sort of my whole life been constitutionally a writer and kept sort of, diaries and was always kind of documenting my life for myself. And when I first got sick, I really lost the ability to read and write. I would write a sentence and pass out for 4 hours. And I found it, when I became bedridden, to be a really lonely and isolating experience. And I was really sad and I was really scared. And I needed something to do with that, or else I knew those emotions were going to destroy me. So that's really where the filming started, and then where I started to think of making a film. I mean, it was a number of things. I think one thing was really going online and finding this community and learning the sort of history and the scale of how many people were affected and how many people had been living with this for so long without being seen by the world, by their communities, and sometimes by their own families for who they were and what this was that they were going through. So I think that sort of social justice piece was a big piece of it for sure. And then I remember this one time I went, was in a doctor's office, and I used every word I had to try to explain what I was going through in terms of the symptoms, and everything basically turned into a headache. So I collapsed on the floor and I was crawling, and then I couldn't lift my head because I couldn't move and I couldn't talk. And invariably you would look at the doctor's notes and it would just be like, headache, aspirin, dehydration. And no one was really taking it seriously. And I was I was in the office and I just took out my phone. And I said, no, look, this is what happened to me in the middle of the night when no one was there. And Omar, my husband, was downstairs and I couldn't call out. And that's really the first images of the film. And as soon as he saw that, his face went white and he was just like, oh my God, we need to get you an MRI, get you a spinal tap. I have no idea what's going on, but I know something's really wrong. And that's sort of when I knew it had to be visual, and that's really where the film came from.
Watching the film, I think in some ways it could be really easy to make it just a personal journey, and then actually what you do is keep opening it out. It keeps blossoming, it goes out into the community in terms of online, it then goes to further even to sort of look at the history, to look at the stigmas. Why was it so important to do that, and at which point did you make the decision to make it so much bigger?
I think there was a personal reason. I mean, at the beginning I wasn't sure if I was going to be in the film, but I filmed myself a lot because I had infinite access to myself and it was cheap. But I, from that place of being really trapped in my home, it wasn't that interesting to me to look inward, and I kind of had to look out and connect in order to be able for the film to do the work that I needed to do in my own life. And I also think, it really wasn't until really long in the edit, I think even until after, hi, this is one of our editors, Emiliano. We've never met in person, but I'm so glad you're finally here. This has actually been a process of meeting a lot of people I've never met before in person. But it was so much easier for me to look at the other footage, and it took me a very long time before I could even watch myself because it was just so emotionally hard. So I think it was for that personal reason that I had to look out. And I also, if it was just a story of, poor woman, on cusp of something, falls ill, I thought it would be really easy to dismiss it as this freak thing that happened to this person. Oh my goodness, thank God that's not me. And I say that because I was that person. I remember reading a New Yorker article by an American writer named Lauren Hillenbrand, who wrote Seabiscuit, And she wrote about when she became ill with ME, and I remember reading it and thinking, that is so horrible. I'm so glad that's not me. And then I got sick 5 years later. And so it was a way of sort of saying, like, this is a common problem, actually, and this is not a problem that happens just in the US or in Denmark or in the UK. And I wanted people to understand that the challenges we face with being listened to and understood are really global and pervasive, and to make it easy, to make it hard to reject that, and to distance yourself from it.
One of the other really brilliant things is the love story, I suppose, that you reveal between yourself and Omar. How willing was he from the start to sort of be exposed in that way, and along with your vulnerabilities, sort of allow his vulnerabilities to be shared?
So that's my husband, Omar, right over there. So, I mean, one of the amazing things about making a personal film is that I didn't have to give over that power and that trust that subjects do to directors, and I'm amazed at anybody who would do that. Like, I don't know that I would ever be anyone else's film. I mean, it's an insane thing to do, and so I think a part of what freed us to just document all of those moments of vulnerability was that we could always decide later if we were showing something that felt too intimate or too hard. But I guess, one, I'm really lucky that I'm married to someone who is has just always been, to the max supportive of my life and my art and my ambitions, and so I think it's that. But I also think, and maybe he can also answer this question, but I think we found early on that these things actually were hard to share. I mean, in early screenings and watching some of those really painful moments I did feel really vulnerable and naked, but I think I came to realize that so many other people have exactly that same experience, that it almost felt like selfish to try to hide it or keep it back, because it became something sad and horrible in private, but in public it could become something beautiful and connective and transformative. So I think we really came to find that it was a gift to others and really to ourselves to have the chance to share it in that way.
When you talk about it being a gift, I was sort of really interested in the way it sort of transformed into activism, so the hashtag Millions Missing, and then also sort of other work that you've been able to do and the other ways in which you've been able to connect, so the TED Talk. But how do you get funding for a film about a disease that no one wants to give funding to research? Like, is that almost the impossible task?
Well, so it's interesting because this is never a film that anybody would have given me permission to make, like, never. And I think it would have been a very hard film to make before the internet and before Kickstarter. And so this film really began. Raise your hand if you're a Kickstarter backer. Have a few in the audience. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so we, I launched a crowdfunding campaign before we even started shooting, and we had a goal of 50K, and I really thought that's enough to shoot something, and then I'll just edit it myself, and then come what may, we'll get the film out there somehow. And we ended up, meeting that goal in like less than 48 hours and raising over $200,000. And so that's unusual, but on the other hand, it's not surprising because there's so many people out there who are dealing with illnesses like this, whether it's ME or other chronic illnesses or invisible illnesses. And it's invisible, right? Like, every time I go and I talk to people, everybody knows somebody who's dealing with something like this. And so I think that really helped us to sort of reveal just how big the problem was and how much demand there was to sort of see these stories on screen.
I think I'm going to open up to questions because I know that people are going to have a lot and I don't want to sort of hog Mike. But who has a question for Jennifer?
was wondering, I know that there's going to be an impact campaign following this film. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and what you hope that impact campaign would do.
Sure, thank you so much. We actually have some members of our team in the back. There's Lucy Wilson, and Lindsay, and Becky. And hi, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for coming. And they are passing on clipboards. And essentially, if you want to get involved in any way with any of the things I'm about to kind of outline, please go and talk to them. But essentially, we're going to come back in the fall and do a theatrical, so in London and several cities around the country. And then we want to do a big campaign of screenings, so to bring the school to university campuses, medical schools, to host dialogues with scientists around the country and really inspire both mid-career and young scientists to join the field, as well as host screenings in Parliament and with people with sort of NIH trusts and policymakers broadly to try to really push for more public and private funding. So grow the scientific field, transform the way medical doctors see the disease, and really grow the base of funding. So those are sort of broadly the goals everywhere, and we're running a campaign here in the US, in Scandinavia, and Australia. But the way that you can get involved, I mean, first of all, just if you enjoyed the film, if it moved you, if it enlightened you, just tell everyone you know about it. Your doctor, your parents, strangers in the street, just talk as much as possible. Tweet, help us make noise and really kind of get the message out there. You can also host a screening. If you have ideas about screenings and communities and spaces where we can kind of have this dialogue, we want to hear about it. And definitely sign up for our email list, and we'll mobilize you when the time comes to engage in the campaign.
Just to follow up on that, Jen, have you had a screening of this to medical professionals who are skeptical, and have you had feedback of the impact on them?
Yeah, so we haven't done a lot of that work yet because we're still sort of in the festival festival phase of the release of the film. But at Sundance, there were a number of doctors in several of the audiences, and I had one doctor tell me I would never have come to see this film if I had known what it was about. Now that I have, I'm a believer. Another doctor who said, stood up and said, we need to show this film to every fourth year medical student because most people decide to practice medicine because they want to help and they want to make a difference. And by the fourth year, that sort of the system of education has ground them down and they've lost their compassion. And that this is really a film that's not just about ME, but about how we listen to patients and how we witness and care for one another. So, so far, every medical professional that has seen the film, I think, has been moved and transformed by it. So I'm really excited about the potential, and also just to sort of start conversations among doctors about what it's like for them, because I think it's very hard to have a patient who comes in with an illness that they really haven't been trained to diagnose or treat, where they have very few tools, and they've been told that they're supposed to have the tools, that they're supposed to have the answers, and what does that do to them? And so I think there's a way to kind of have that conversation across both sides of the experience, and hopefully, move things forward and reframe how we as patients and doctors connect with each other.
I just want to say thank you. We're part of the Fibro Petition team.
Oh, hi.
And basically, all of your goals is what we're trying to achieve for fibromyalgia as well. And we both have ME, so basically we're trying to fight to get it to Parliament, and at the moment we're at 30k. The charity that we've been made trustees for, we also support the CFSME MS, so it's trying to get awareness and all of it, and that film just, because I've got 2 little girls, and it got me to the show. It's so moving, it's so wonderful. Thank you so much for helping to retweet, and yeah. I do have a question for you, Jen. Since I got my diagnosis, you said throughout during the film, you did feel lost. I went through that process myself, through the work we're doing with the charity. I feel like I've got a sense of purpose back through doing this. Is that giving you more of a sense of purpose back, and giving yourself a boost to try and help others even more?
Yeah, so I think what I would say is that one of the most dehumanizing things about this experience was feeling like I had nothing to give anymore to anyone. And I think that this wasn't portrayed in the film, but Jessica Taylor, the young woman in Kent, has spent a good part of her life in bed, and most of those years she has run a charity from her bed. It's called Share a Star, and essentially she helps children who are more ill than she is. And I learned something from her in that, which is that no matter how small that space is that we have to operate in, whether, you know, how little money we have, or how little health we have, or how little time we have, we still have something we can do for others. And doing for others is the most empowering, uplifting thing I think all of us can do as humans, as you know, while we are alive. And so I think I learned that from this. And so I would say yes. And I think, you know, everyone in the film is able to do as well as they can, and are doing, I think, in part because they have such loving and supportive families. And not everybody with this has that. Many people get sick, their families don't believe them, they are abandoned, people end up homeless. And it is really, really hard if you don't have that community and connection. But I think even if you don't have it in your family, it's possible to create it and to find it, and for us to all find that together with each other. And so I think that's, in some ways, the greatest outcome of that campaign, is to grow that community and help us become stronger, more empowered, and more connected with each other. So let's talk more after about how we can do that.
Yeah, I just wondered how much hope you had to be able to make a full recovery, and I also just wondered, with all the people that you've connected with, whether you've also seen people make a full recovery that you've spoken to as well. So I actually used to have any myself, so yeah, but I don't need more.
That's wonderful. I personally I've met people who've had ME and recovered. Meaning like they were well and they told me they had ME, they recovered. There's no one I know that ever recovered. I've gotten a lot better over time, and I ascribe that to the sort of pharmaceutical drugs that I have access to that are essentially impossible to get here. And so I think let me put it this way: this is a very treatable disease, and by that I mean people can improve with treatment. Whether it's treatments that exist or yet to be found, and that's why I'm so passionate about research. And I also think that it is probably a curable disease. So in that sense, it's like any other condition that is accessible with science. But in terms of recovery, I think what's hard is that I think people do recover, and I've never heard a single story that's the same as another. So it's like there's 40 stories of recovery, and they're all different. And it's hard to know what to make of that, but I think you know, every story has value, and I listen, and I always try to come up with new ideas of things to try and ways to improve, because I have found things that have helped me improve 5%. But I think we need science, and we need large-scale trials, because I can't say that what works for you will work for me or for anybody else until we do that.
I think we'll take one more question, and then sadly we have to finish there. So this gentleman just in front.
Hi, thanks very much. Amazing film. I've got two questions for her, which is a practical question, really. I mean, it's an amazing film, but also from a practical point of view, it was incredible how you managed. I mean, filmmaking is tough, but you managed to make it remotely. How did you do that? Especially like the film of interviews abroad. How did you choose it? Did you choose to frame remotely? How did you deal with people?
Yeah, so it was a process. So I'll say a couple of things. I had a big team, and so I worked with filmmakers in the UK, the US, and in Denmark, and I think it was and so in terms of the communication, I mean, it was a lot of like trying to convey, the interviews were much easier because I had a live feed that was coming from the camera, and I could actually see the image and sort of say, oh, light's too bright, or need a wider framing or something like that, or I could plan like, let's have the camera above Jessica's bed because I want to be able to see her from that angle, but anything else that was shot we really couldn't plan. So there was a live feed from the camera when it worked, and that enabled me to kind of see what was being filmed, but mostly it was sort of me giving feedback on footage iteratively, after shoots, and really trying to also send things around between the teams to sort of try to get on the same page about the aesthetic. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of things I just didn't really have control over, and so I think the film was helped in part by the iPhone footage, in the sense that because it was never going to be a single, totally controlled aesthetic, it sort of, I think, helps to kind of have things feel like a piece when it's 5 types of everything, if that makes sense. And then with the interviews, I interview people over Skype, and we use something called basically an iPad teleprompter, which I think you saw in the film. So the iPad sits in a bed and then has my image on it, and my voice is broadcast into the room, and it reflects the mirror up over the lens, so people could be kind of looking straight at me, me in New Jersey, them in Hillsborough, Denmark, or in Kent, and that was how we shot the film. But it was hard. It was hard for the crews, and it was hard for me, and I wouldn't choose to make a film that way. And at the same time, it was such an amazing form of transportation for me. So the very last scene in the film, or rather before one of the last scenes of the film, was me watching a sunset. And that was our DP, Christian, putting a camera on the hood of his car in the middle of a forest that I've never been to. And I was so struck by the emotion of that moment because I hadn't seen the sun in my own backyard in 4 months, and I forgot what it looked like, and suddenly it was there, and I had that almost that kinetic feeling of like sitting on the head of a car and kind of flying through the countryside at sunset. So I wouldn't, hopefully it won't be that hard next time, but it really was a way to travel. Thank you.
Chris at the back, because we're promoting ME. Sheffield's got quite a good active Sheffield ME and fibromyalgia group. So if there are anybody who's here who wants support from it, especially anybody who is good at funding, because we've lost everything on the contrary, because they won't carry on funding as with what we've got to have something different. So while we're here, and we are in Sheffield, if you look on Facebook, on the internet, Sheffield ME Fibromyalgia Group.
What's your name?
Mine's Jill Watkin, I'm just a member.
Okay.
Chris at the back.
Chris at the back.
Chris
Okay.
at the back.
If anyone is interested in participating in the group or helping to support it, please see Chris after the screening.
Okay, will you just join me in thanking Jennifer so much?